Hello and welcome to this short lecture video discussing your case right over here on unauthorized users data cleansing and analysis case using Microsoft Excel. So this file, this Microsoft Word document, I will post on Canvas, and then I will also post your raw data file right over here as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and review the case. And so this lecture video kind of covers this case, gives you a background, and talks to you exactly what you're supposed to do in the case. All right, so in terms of the case overview, assume you're an internal auditor investigating unauthorized logical access. So logical access is talking about users accessing the system, the computer system. Physical access would be somebody actually using a key to get into the building. So we're talking about logical access, all right? So access, logging into the system, okay? Logging into their email, logging into through VPN, whatever context you want to give it, but it's logical access into a computer system, all right? So you're looking at unauthorized logical access. So your manager has provided you with data from the organization's system logs. And so what they've done is they've looked through the system logs, and these system logs track who logged in, okay? And then they combine that with some other data to determine, all right, here's the person, here's the username of the person that logged in. Here's their date that they last logged in. Here's the file that they accessed when they did log in. Here was their IP address. And then this is the date they were terminated. Okay? Terminated means fired. So this table describes those, and I think I just kind of talked about that. But let's talk about what you're supposed to do in this case. So your manager has asked you to investigate two key issues. The first one is find those users who have logged in into the system past the termination date. So if I were to bring up, this is my solution right over here. And of course, I'm not going to show you the formulas and show you the answers, but I'll show you the answers, but you have to give me the formula to solve this. So this is, for example, past the due date. So we can look over here and we can see somebody is last logged in. Let's look at this. 7/10/2019. That's when they last logged in, but they were terminated there. That is a problem. That's a problem. They should not be logging in after they've been fired. Okay, but you might be thinking, well, how in the world would that ever happen? Well, think about that example that I talked about in another video, or maybe it was during a Canvas conference call, when I said, I kept getting paid from a company I left. I left EDS, and they kept paying me for about another 3 weeks. And something went wrong. They didn't shut off payroll. They kept paying me. So these things can happen, all right? So your task, that's your first task. Then your second task will be to find users who have logged in on dates when the organization is closed. Assume the organization is closed on weekends. So if we look over here, okay, look, these are all people who have logged in. This date, 10/19/2019, is a Saturday. Organization is closed on the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. Why are they logging in on Saturdays and Sundays? They could be doing work from home. That's fine. But that is uncommon for this organization. It's not very common that they would be doing that. So this does raise some flags about why are people doing this, all right? So that's the other thing that you want to look at. And this is where I say this is why it's a problem. Unauthorized access by terminated employees, well, that could cause them to cause misstatement of assets, deletion of data, unauthorized disclosure of important information. They may be able to get data and give it to a competitor. Logins to the system when the organization would be abnormal, maybe something to commit fraud. Okay? Your tasks are to clean and scrub the data and determine which users have logged in past their termination date, and also determine which users have logged in when the organization is closed, which is Saturdays and Sundays. Here are your learning objectives. Okay? Let's take a look at the case steps. And so what you'll do is you'll download this raw data. That's the name of the file right there, raw data 2 XLS. And this is what it looks like. This is your raw data. So you can see that's the first tab, and then the second tab comes over here, and this is your file types, and I've given this to you. So this is just a table that shows you the extension of this file name. So like PPT, the extension, the PPT after the period, that's the file extension. That PPT is a PowerPoint file, And the person that would be in charge of resolving that problem is Jennifer Henderson. Okay? So that's what I was kind of saying right over there. First worksheet is the raw data. The second one is these tables right over here. The second table I have right over here is day of week and then the day. Okay? Like this. And you need this for one of the functions in Excel. All right. So walking through the steps, you're first going to create a copy of this raw data, all logins, raw data. And then you're going to create a new worksheet called reports past login date right over here. Okay. And so you're going to format it as it is. Like some of these, you're just going to have to bold it, right, and pull it in over, and you might have to move termination date over here because I think it's over here. So you just want to move that over and just kind of straighten it out a little bit so it looks like, I'm sorry, this tab right over here. All right. Let's look at these. Let's look at some of these files. I'm sorry, look at some of these columns. So if we look over here, for example, this login past turn date, this is something you're going to have to calculate. And so basically you're going to have to compare, is this login date more than the termination date? Okay. Now you can see right over here, everything says yes. And there's, I think it's, I can't tell right over there, but there's a certain number of, hold on, I can tell you. Give me a second. There are 95 people who have logged in past their termination date. Okay. 95 users. And if you look back over here at the raw data, you can see that there's 1,000 rows. So that's a good quick check problem, quick check for you, okay? So you're going to have to do a formula that compares these two. Now, if you look back at the raw data, you can see there are some blanks here. If it's blank, that means they have not been terminated, okay? So when you do a formula over here, you're going to have to consider whether it's blank or not, okay? And then same thing over here, calculating the number of days passed beyond the login. Okay. And again, you can see everybody I have here is yes. That means they logged in past their login date. So this is 114 days. So that means from the 18th of March through the 10th of July, it's been 114 days. Okay. What file type did they access? It says the graphics file right over here. And how do I know that? Well, I had to remove the extension. Okay. Had to remove, or I had to strip the extension and then compare it within this table. So for example, if it had said PPT, I would look up, keyword look up, PowerPoint file, and I would put that there, okay? So that's how I got this graphics file, and then the person assigned, I also have to look up in this third column in this table, okay? So I think that kind of explains now this log, some more hints right over here at the login past the term date. As I said, that's a new field. It should return yes if they've logged in past their termination date or no if they haven't. You'll need to use the isBlank function and then the if function to solve that. So I'm telling you. The other thing that I want is if you can see over here, on file. If I look over here, you can see, again, all these are yeses. So I've removed all the no's. Remember, there's 1,000 users. And so I've only got a certain number that have logged in past their termination date. Okay. So I only want to show those here. So you need to remove the ones who didn't do that. Okay. So you'll need to sort the data and then remove those rows. And then the number of days is another new field. And so you're going to put in a formula to calculate that. Right over here, and then you're going to put in a formula to calculate this and then calculate that. So the file type is a new field, and you'll need to use the mid function, the VLOOKUP function. Then over here for the person assigned, you'll need to use the VLOOKUP function. You could also use a combination of mid and VLOOKUP. So as I put in a screenshot of how it should look, but you can also see this in this little lecture video, the way it should look. Okay. The other thing, the next task is determine which users have logged in on a Saturday or Sunday. Remember, the organization is closed on the weekends, and they typically don't want people working on the weekends, and so it'd be kind of weird to have people log in on the weekends, okay? That would be abnormal. And so that's something that as an internal auditor, that your boss has actually asked you to look into. Okay, so again, you'll make another copy of that source data, and you'll come over here and you'll rename it weekend logins. Okay. And then you can see I've got username, date logged in, and then the day of the week. And so let's take a look at that. Enter a formula to calculate the day of the week the user last logged in. And so I'm giving you a hint. This is a new function that we have not talked about in any prior lecture videos or class, but it's called the weekday function. So I want you to do some research on that. You can either do some research on the web, or Google. You can find some other resources, or you can just put it into Excel and see what it returns. But you're going to have to use that in conjunction with the VLOOKUP function to look up the day that corresponds to the number which is returned by the function. Okay, the function weekday returns a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but then you need to use the VLOOKUP function to return which day it is, because that's what I want there, right? Okay. And so that shows us this, and then the file access, and then the file access is just straight from the raw data. The file type and person assigned are similar formulas to what you did right over here. Okay. So that's the step 3. Then we go on to step 4, which is to create a pivot table and then a pivot chart. Okay. So if we come over here, this is, you want to do insert a pivot table. So basically what you can do is, just really quickly, you can come over here and you can like this, insert based upon your raw data. So you'll do this based upon your weekend logins, and you'll just go pivot chart and pivot table. And then you'll set up your pivot table so it looks like this. And then you'll set up a pivot chart so it looks like this. Now, we went over charting earlier in the semester. And so I'm assuming, and most of the students, most of y'all in class didn't have too much problems with that. So I'm assuming that you can go ahead and figure out how to format this pie chart so it looks just like this, okay? And then that's the third step. That's the third step, okay? And then that's what your figure should look like. And then, of course, this is due to me on the 17th. This is a group project. It's due to me on the 17th at 5 p.m. via email. All right. Thanks so much. Please let me know if you have any questions.